Hi YouTube, welcome back to this rather random collection of clips. I've just been going through what I've got filmed and I found some clips where I started dismantling the master cylinder. So I don't cover it completely, but you get to kind of see what's going on inside the master cylinder, kinda. So if you're interested in that, this will be a fascinating watch. Also, I didn't film stripping this down, but I did film putting it back together, again with some clips missing because, I don't know, I've either lost them or I didn't film it in the first place. But again, if you want to see kind of what's going on in here, then again, that'll be fascinating viewing for you. And while I was filming that stuff, I found some clips where I fit this coolant crossover bypass pipe thing to the engine that I forgot to put in the last update video. So I'll throw them in as a bonus. This is going to be a voiceover type thing because I didn't talk in any of these videos. What am I doing there? Oh yes, so that's the gravity fed line that comes off the master cylinder. I'd plugged it with an old bolt, so that's me just taking that out and draining all the disgusting looking fluid out. I actually ended up discarding this reservoir and getting another one. Shall I explain why? Yeah, go on. So what happened was, a few years ago, when I was even less educated on cars than I am now, I decided to do a kind of engine bay restoration, a bit like what I'm doing now, but super amateur. And in that process, I cleaned up this reservoir without removing it, and then thought it'd be a good idea to spray it with lacquer to make it shiny. Unfortunately, over time, that lacquer yellowed and kind of peeled. Even though in this photo it looks quite smart, it wasn't up close. So I did try and remove that lacquer. I tried using thinners, that didn't really work. And as a last ditch attempt, I tried sanding it, thinking I could kind of polish it up, but that just destroyed the plastic. So that left me no choice but to buy a second-hand reservoir. So that's the story of the reservoir. There you go, back to the video. So this is the pin and its fixings that hold the brake pedal pivot in place. I was originally intending to take the whole brake pedal mechanism off because it's a faff trying to work with it on. It makes the whole thing a really awkward shape. And to do that, you would knock out this pin. There it is on the table for your viewing pleasure. And after removing that, you need to go up to the top and remove this bolt that's held in with a nut, which I'm doing there. To get it out, you need to put the nut back on so that you can protect the threads whilst whacking it with a hammer and then use a punch to drive the rest of it out. And then the reason there's no more video of that is I decided it was a bad idea because the whole brake pedal mechanism is held in with a really meaty spring and I didn't want to disturb that because I didn't think I'd be able to get it back together. So I just put a bolt through while I was doing all the work and left it well alone. After that, I decided to remove the reservoir. So that's that bolt that you just saw there. Undo that. That's holding on to a little metal bracket that stops the reservoir from coming off. The reservoir, as you can see, even though I drained it as best I could, is still full of stuff. And it also didn't want to let go of the seals. So I gave them a bit of lube and then it still didn't really want to come off. So I got violent with it with a lever and that got it off. I then tackled these rear brake pipes. They came off really easily. There's 1, 2, 3 of those, and those are just some blanks that I had on. They're not part of the actual thing. That then allowed me to remove this plate, which I wanted to send off for plating, which I did, and that's come back all lovely and gold. There it is, off. Oh yeah, and then I thought I'd try and split this part because I wanted to send these bolts off for plating, but they were super stubborn. A bit of heat got this side out eventually, but not before I'd completely destroyed the Torx head cap socket thing, hence the mole grips to get it off. As you can see, that's beyond repair. I ended up sourcing some new bolts. The other one took a bit of persuasion with a very long breaker bar, but it did give in. Curiosity got the better of me. Plus, I kind of want to tidy this up, and whether you like it or not, if you're going to tidy stuff up to an OCD standard, you kind of need to dismantle stuff and understand how it works. It's just part of the process. So, I may as well just talk through the parts of this brake system. I'm not going to pretend to know what everything does. I don't really care. I just thought, while I've got it apart, this might be useful for some of my viewers. So this is your brake pedal here, and that does that, you know, when you press it with your foot thing. It's held on with some pretty meaty springs. It looks like there's 2 of them in there. That's why I haven't taken this out fully. I don't really fancy having to relocate those, if I'm honest. It's held in, well, it's held in currently with a bolt, which I punched through whilst I punched out the other one so that the whole thing didn't come apart. Hopefully I can do that in reverse. That's what's holding it all in, with a nut and a washer on the end, obviously. To attach the mechanism, the pedal arm, sorry, to the mechanism that does the pressing the brake thing, which is this, which we'll get to in a minute. That's just held on with a little pin, and it's actually a C-clip, P-clip. I think they're called C-clips, and a washer. Why is that so far out, actually? There we go. It's just got itself stuck. Yeah, so the brake pedal usually sits about there. When you press the brake pedal in, you're compressing this bit, moving on down the operation. Looking at that from the other side, as you press the brake pedal, what it's doing is just pushing this plunger in and out. Doesn't seem to be anything particularly fancy about that. I have actually unscrewed this just because, again, curiosity. So I'm assuming under there's probably a seal somewhere. Can't see. I need to give that a good clean up in there. There's all sorts of debris, but yeah, that's just sliding in and out like that. This gasket looks like it's seen better days, but I bet you can't get it anymore, so I'm just going to pretend I didn't see that. So that's that bit. I don't know what the hell's going on here. This is just disgusting. Seems to be some sort of crustiness, like crystallized brake fluid or something. Just going to blow that out a little bit. It's borrowed one of the kids' toothbrushes. They won't notice. They don't use them anyway. Well, I don't know what that's for. Looks like maybe you put a flat in there and unscrew that to get to things in there. Maybe that's useful for someone. Not for me. I'm just going to leave that well alone. A couple of O-rings here. Must make sure I don't lose them. Moving on to the next part in the chain of command. That plunger, which was coming in and out. I'm still leaking brake fluid. Doesn't matter how much brake fluid I pour out of this thing, it still finds more. Look at it. You done? You done now? It's like when I don't walk the dog for a while and he does his first piss. There we go. Shake it off. Yes, next part in line. That plunger does the in and out thing. That pushes on this kind of long pill-shaped piece, which is in there. That does that motion. Or actually, to be fair, what it does is this motion, and I'm not probably strong enough to press it with my bare hands. But that's it. So basically that whole piece, ow, is doing that. and that's making your brake fluid pressurize and come out of all the holes. So I'm not going to dismantle that, I don't need to. There's a spring there, there's a funky wavy washer and an O-ring there. All looks in good condition. The only thing I do need to do is clean the other side of what that was there off here, because it's all covered in crap. What you want to do is scratch up the surface that's obviously very, very specifically machined. That's it. That's what I wanted. Yeah, okay. I need to clean that thoroughly, but at least that's got rid of all that crustiness. So that's pushing in on that. There's some little tiny ins and outs here that are underneath the valve house thing, which we'll get to in a sec. So I said there was an inlet there for the reservoir on that piece, and there's also the rear or front, I don't know which one's which there. I've just capped these off, by the way, while I was wire brushing this all off another day. That sits like, does it? Yeah, like that. That's bolted on left and right with these bolts. Now, I destroyed one of these. I've just ordered some new ones. One of them came out fine. The other one did not. So I've managed to replace them. I've actually replaced them with hex head bolts. Hopefully there'll be less chance of rounding them off, is what I'm trying to say. On these studs here goes what I'm calling the valve house. I don't know if that's what it's called. I'm just going to take this plate off for now, just so you can see how this sits on. Oh, may as well explore in here, by the way, because I've taken the bolts off. So here's some... Oh, mustn't use that. There's a seal here that sits in a very specific way, which I've just forgotten. There you go. You know it's the right way around because it's got these stepped bits at the side. Doesn't really want to stay in though. So in there is some electronic valves. These are for things and stuff that I don't understand. ABS. Why is that one wet? No, it's just greasy. Okay, well, I'm going to leave all that well alone. I just thought I'd show you what was in there. I'm assuming they can be removed and replaced if needed. I don't know. That's covered by a lid, like so, making sure that your seal is in place. That just drops on here. Where's the... Oh, underneath, should show you. Obviously aligning with various inlets or outlets. There are some inlets and outlets, and they have specific seals. I'm assuming you can replace these. So it's 3 studs, locate it on. This one I've already had zinc plated, so that goes all the way through and holds all that on. I'll just finger tight that to stop everything falling apart again for now. Oh, there should be a washer under there, by the way, but it doesn't matter for now. So that's kind of how it sits on your car. This is all your outlets, because under here is where all your brake fluid comes gushing out of. I've had this all zinc plated. I'm very happy. I'm trying not to get brake fluid all over it. I don't know if it'll mess up the finish. That sits on there, obviously, before you put the nuts on. That's bollocks. It goes the other way around. There we go. But basically, they will connect up something like that. 1, 2, 3. There's some other outlets somewhere as well. Where is it? Oh yeah, I found it. I've just flipped it around the other way, so front of the car's that way now. And there's another outlet. I seem to remember there's a specific pipe comes off there and connects onto a thing. I can't remember. You'll see all this reassembled when I pull out lots of diagrams and old videos of mine and have a massive headache trying to remember how all the brake lines and wiring all link up, but we'll figure that out later. There's a connector there. Not sure what that's for, but that'll be in the loom video. I must have made a note of that. Here and here, obviously these grommets come out and they have these seals sat in them, like so. I assume you can replace those, maybe not. And then finally, I don't really want to touch it because I've got lovely dirty hands now, and I spent many hours cleaning this the other day to try and get it as new looking as possible. This is the reservoir, obviously. That sits on there. So this outlet with the little penis coming out of it, that goes in the front one. This fat open outlet goes in the back one, and that just leaves this one that's on a actually, while I was cleaning it, I found out that's on a spring-loaded thing. If you push a wire up there, there's actually a spring-loaded seal. If you're not careful, by the way, you can just see there's some little runners that it runs on. Push it too far, it fucks off up inside here, and it's an absolute nightmare to get it back on its rails. So, yeah, don't do that. I was trying to clean out the last bit of crud that was sat down in here, so I was pushing it up and down, and yeah, made myself another 3 hours of work. I actually thought I was going to have to sack this off. I've actually got another one on order because I figured I'd broken this one, and then many hours later I managed to realign it and it went ping and popped back down. Just a word of caution. Anyway, that sits like that on there, pushes in. It's also held in with a little screw here. There's a little metal flap somewhere. What have I done with it? There. I've actually had that zinc plated, so that little metal flap slots up inside there. May as well put it on here now, actually. And that locates in on that little screw there and just stops it lifting off. The last thing is just that outlet there, which, does it go that way? No, it goes that way. It's just a gravity fed pipe. Goes onto a big pipe that runs over the bulkhead and off to your rear brake pump, and what's that black cylinder called? You know, the thing that makes the noise and then makes the rear brake booster thing, which, like I said, you'll see all that being reassembled many months from now. But I just thought, while I had it all in pieces, it would just be worth showing you my explorations. So I hope you enjoyed that. I just realised there was a thing here, so I undid it because, you know, we're deep into random explorations here, and there's a weird little thing. It's got a little nodule on here, locates on a thing down in there that holds on to the thing that does the in and out thing. Scientific explanations here, by the way. I'll just show you down in there. Yeah, again, don't know what it does. Don't know what it's for. I'm just exploring. It's got an O-ring sealing it on. I was actually looking to see if I could have this zinc plated again, but it's kind of part of this mechanism, so I'm guessing not. Yeah, I need to make sure they're the right way up. It can only go that way. That then slots back in, hopefully, to that little nodule there, like that. And it does a thing. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, there's a bit of a gap missing. I don't know if I didn't film stuff or whether I've just lost the videos while I was busy doing engine project. I'll be honest, I've got millions of clips of videos on my computer at the minute with the engine, so there's a good chance I just lost the clips. Anyway, I'll just talk through the finished product now. It's just sat in storage ready to be fitted to the car as and when. I did mention as well this red gasket. I didn't think I'd be able to source a new one, but you can. They're not expensive, so that's being replaced with a new gasket. Again, in behind there, I've just spun it around the other way because you can see better from this side. Yeah, it had all these nuts zinc plated, these the original ones, and I think you saw me fighting with these two bolts, and I said I'd replace them with a hex head. I'm not sure what this is called. Socket cap maybe is the correct term. So these are two new bolts. There was no gasket in between here, so I'm assuming that's just metal on metal. I did clean up that surface as best I can. There's those seals that the reservoir presses down into. I haven't sourced new ones of those. They seemed perfectly serviceable. Obviously I did speak about how I'd cleaned up the reservoir, but I didn't actually say how I'd done it. What I did was I took it off and then soaked it in really strong dishwasher water, hot dishwasher water, shook it about a lot, agitated it for a good kind of few hours, just on and off in the outdoor sink. I think that's come out really well. So that's hopefully the way to do it. Obviously then I left it open for, to be honest, about a month, and also blasted air through it just to make sure that I got rid of any moisture. While I've got it round this way, I'll just show you the brake lines. So these are the feeds out from the pump going off to various places in the car. I had that plate zinc plated, and I also gave them the brake lines, and I think they've done a fantastic job of plating them up. I was looking to rebuild those, just make new lines, but I don't have a way of making really short lines, because the trouble is when you need to flare the end of a brake line with a bend in it, you need to put the end on first and then flare the end, and then I wouldn't have room to get my bender in there to do that tight bend. There must be some trick to doing really short brake lines that I don't know, so I'm very happy that I managed to just reuse the original ones. On the front of that plate, these are just blanks at the minute. I probably don't need them in anymore, but just in case there's any residual brake fluid floating around in there, because while it's in storage it might end up on its side or upside down or whatever. I don't want any of that brake fluid leaking out on my lacquer, because what I've done with most of this unit is bare metaled it and then given it a coat of lacquer. It's the same thing that I've done with the water rails. What seems to happen is over time the aluminium underneath actually darkens slightly under the lacquer. It gives it quite a nice industrial look. So that's the brake master cylinder type thing covered, and heading over the other side of the bulkhead, I have finished rebuilding the accumulator pump thing, which is equally as annoying to store. It never wants to sit up straight. It's time to put the brake accumulator pump back together. I don't think I filmed taking this apart. I took it apart because, well, whoops. I actually wanted it, just pop that back on there. I actually wanted it plating, because this, when it comes from factory, is sort of gold passivate plated. Like this stuff that I've had plated. But there wasn't any way of stopping all the chemicals and crap getting in. So I actually found this gold paint, which I'm very happy with. I generally don't like gold paint. It very rarely looks how I want it, but that's come out pretty well. I've now got to remember how this goes back together. I had to strip down quite a few bits to do the painting. I know these bits go in here, so let's just start by pressing those in. That's nice and easy. And there's one down this end as well. Blanked off there for painting, so I need to pop that out, and that as well. It looks like I've painted in here. I haven't. This is the original plating, which, like I said, I've managed to colour match. Almost identical. I put a little dab of hot glue there and fitted a washer, just the right size, and obviously filled the whole of the washer. And then when you painted, you just pop it back off, and the hot glue doesn't like to stick. What did I come over here for? Something like that to lever these other blanking washers off. There you go. That one's just a brake line. I think this one's something daft that I made. Yeah, it is. That's where the accumulator ball sits. How does this go back together? That's it. This very thin O-ring, which unfortunately on mine has stretched, which isn't ideal. And I have tried to find a new one and I can't. You can just see it's slightly loose. But if I get it in correctly, I don't think it will matter. If it does, I'll have to come back to this later. That needs pressing down, and these hooky bits need to stick up like that because they hold this, what I can only describe looks homemade, sort of ring. So if I put a bit of lube on there we go. Right, that's what I wanted. That's sat in there. So I've done that a few times, and when I look down there, you can see that the O-ring is seated correctly. So I'm going to go with that. This sort of homemade piece, I don't think it matters which way it goes in. That just sits in there. I don't know what that does. And then this piece is a bit flatter on the back and then slightly more rounded on the top. Is that a bit of fluff? Yes, it was a bit of fluff. We don't want that. That sits like that. This seal confuses me as well, because you'd think it would sit inside that lip, but it's clearly far too big for that. It sort of wants to sit right on the edge. I've decided that seal must be supposed to sit inside this lip. It just makes no sense otherwise. And for some reason, while it's been out in storage, it's grown. It's not been in brake cleaner or anything like that. I know that swells seals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try putting it in some boiling water. Sometimes that can shrink O-rings just a little bit. Boiling water didn't work. Maybe you're supposed to boil it for longer. Put it in the freezer. That makes more sense to me. Cold, shrink. So while that's in the freezer, I'm just going to do some other stuff. This cap goes back on here somehow. Just covers up these loose wires. Is that it? Yep, I think so. Pop this bit back in. Just put a bit of lube on the O-ring. Don't know how tight that needs to be. Actually, pop that in the vise. I'll be able to turn it using the body as leverage, won't I? That's okay. Hopefully that's tight enough. If brake fluid comes leaking out, then we know it wasn't. Let's put a bit of lube on that. That goes somewhere there. It was a pain to pull out, so I was going to say it's probably going to be a pain to put back in, but it wasn't. It's also held in with this little securing pin. I guess they were worried it might pop out under pressure. So that's that. I need to check the torque spec for the accumulator ball, so I'm going to just leave that hand tight for now. I decided for storage purposes to mount this piece on its mount. Because I'd had it powder coated, the thread here was blocked up with powder coat, which is pretty tough stuff. So it just needed chasing out with a tap. I'm pretty good at snapping these taps, so I was glad this was successful. That seems to have fixed that. So that goes on its prong. That has this washer. In fact, let's have it over this way. One thing I didn't get round to showing on video, or I forgot to film, was I was faffing about with the seal in here. That I couldn't find a replacement, and it seemed to have swollen. Putting it in the freezer seemed to shrink it a little bit, but it wasn't enough. And I needed 4 hands to hold it into that little lip while I was putting this on without it popping back out. So what I ended up doing actually was cleaning it all off and putting a very, very thin layer of that Hylamar blue stuff, literally just to kind of glue it in place, and use basically like a third hand just to hold it in place while I got that on. And that seemed fairly successful. So I wouldn't normally choose to use a sealant in there. I wouldn't normally, like I sound like I know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm making this up as I go along. That's what I had to do, is what I'm saying, okay? I know some experts are going to say you can't use sealant in there, it'll blow up. But I just couldn't hold that seal in place. I will continue to research and see if I can find that seal anywhere. And if so, I can just dismantle it and put a new seal in. But for now, that's in. I also didn't show this washer thing. There we go, that's better. I believe it goes that way in a sort of cup washer formation. And then that's about it on that. Once it's connected back to the car, that's the low pressure send that comes off from the other side of this unit. Where is it? There. So that goes off on that sort of fabric hose, connects onto a metal line that runs along the bulkhead and connects it in there, I believe, if I remember rightly. Then you've got your send out, go into your rear brakes. I think, again, like I said, once I put all this back together, I might realise I'm talking absolute nonsense. I've got a bit of a run on my lacquer there. It's a little bit thick. I hope you found that absolutely fascinating. Join me next video for an equally fascinating dive into the Jaguar XJS auxiliary air valve. I don't know why I'm talking like David Attenborough, but see you next time. Yeah, one job I do want to get done, you may notice I've taken off the air conditioning compressor, is put on this coolant bypass rail. Again, just to get it off the bench. I need as much space over here in the next weeks or so as possible. So, I need to find some Jubilee clips. I've got a new hose for the bottom and 2 new hoses for the sides.